Hey there, everybody. Happy Friday. Thanks for joining us on this Friday Night Live here at the interview room.
Which is a rarity.
It can be, yeah, it has been.
But we're glad we're here.
Yeah, and thank you all for being with us. Let's just start off first with just a huge thank you to our amazing mods who keep our chat a warm and welcoming place. Thank you, ladies, so much. We want to just give a shout out to Miss Sophia, Maui Girl, Mimi J2, Teresa M, and Laura Waldy. Thank you so much, ladies. And we also want to thank our subscribers, our Patreon members, and our YouTube members. Without you, none of this is possible. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We really, really appreciate your continued support.
Absolutely. And who do we have in the house? Let's see here. We've got the Netherlands in the house. It's a little too late. Hello. Hi, Trixie. I agree. Karen looks 25.
Simone, you're so great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Tell us where everybody's at tonight. Canada's in the house. Washington. It's so great to have you all here. Wisconsin. Man, it's so exciting to have friends that we've got to meet a lot of you at CrimeCon. That we hope on the next one in Las Vegas we get to meet many, many more of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for everything. Mississippi, Connecticut, Orange County, Idaho, Michigan, Tennessee, Florida, Nevada, Seattle, New Jersey, Maine, Vermont, Lynchburg, Virginia, South Carolina is in the house. North Carolina is in the house. Oh my goodness. Great. Louisiana, Pennsylvania, Seattle, Spokane, Florida, Minnesota, Washington State, Northern Nevada, the Silver State, absolutely. Illinois, Holland, Michigan. Wow, you guys had some serious problems recently up there in Michigan. Arizona's in the house. Sydney, Australia. Hello, Sydney. Thank you so much for being here. New Mexico, North Carolina, NorCal. You know, I was born in North Carolina. I was born in Jacksonville, out there at Camp Lejeune, where my dad was stationed at the time. Central Texas, Northern Virginia. Thank you, thank you, thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Karen, I think we have the greatest people that follow our channel. What do you think to that? What do you think?
We are very lucky. We're so fortunate. We have an incredible TIR family. We welcome everybody. The more the merrier. We love growing our TIR family. And so we're so grateful. If you guys can just remember to click the like button. We know you've subscribed because you're in chat. But for those of you watching not in chat, please remember to subscribe and share this out on your social platforms. We'd really appreciate that.
Yep. And that's the only thing we ever ask. That is the only thing we ever ask. Hello, Scotland. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Well,
it's morning for them, evening for us, and morning for them. That's for sure.
Yeah. You know, so Karen says to me, she goes, you know, we should do more of these rather than just only Sunday. I mean, Sundays are, you know, our focus, but every once in a while with all of the stuff going on, there's more information that drops. And then of course, you know, we don't necessarily cover any, you know, breaking news or anything like that. It's just, there are tremendous amounts of channels that do that. And, you know, we are always, you know, grateful for them. And I know that you have many other friends on other channels that you watch. And we think that's really, really cool and really great. Tonight, though, we have a tremendous amount of information that we've been going over, like everybody else. And, you know, a couple of things that Karen and I have, you know, been diving from day one into in the Brian in this killer's case is, what in the world was the university doing when this whole thing kicked off? And we know for a fact that they are still, even to this day, trying to create a narrative that we're going to go into in depth again on Sunday. But Karen, yeah, and congratulations to the Dodgers in LA and the Blue Jays for making it to the World Series. Man, what a game that was. It could have gone either way. I mean, by maybe 6 or 8 inches on that slide at home. But that said, Karen, I mean, you've been doing obviously a lot more digging into the university. We've gotten responses back that we'll talk about from the public relations directors over there, as well as the governor's office as well, right, Karen?
Yes. We have heard back from the Idaho governor's communications director for some questions that we had. And we are definitely going to go in depth about that. We're going to show you the email that we got, and we're going to talk a little bit about, some of that. I would have to say that, we're with this recent document dump of these 2,356 pages that you guys other channels have covered a lot of it. We're taking a little bit different approach with diving into it. And we touched upon it a little bit last Sunday with our interview with Steve and Kristi Goncalves. But Chris, obviously, as a seasoned homicide detective, has gone through these documents with those eyes from that perspective. And I tell you what, he's been combing through it, and he would be like, "Hey, Karen, come in here, come over here. I found this." And things would jump off the page to him that a lot of us either missed or didn't fully understand. So that's a lot of what we're going to be going through tonight. And I have to say that releasing 2,300 pages of documents may sound like, oh, wow, the prosecutor, the courts, they're trying to be transparent. They're trying to release this stuff. But I have to say that if you guys look at these documents, again, 80% are redacted pages that have absolutely nothing on them. It's like a black page of redacted information. And there's also a ton that they haven't released. And you guys may or may not know this, but behind the scenes, our channel's got to be just one of a ton of people that are continuing to send in FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests into everybody, the prosecutor, Idaho State Police, Moscow Police Department, the governor's office, whatever, all of that. And I'll give you guys an example. In my opinion, I've been a journalist for 35 plus years. In whole, they really are not being transparent. And why do I say that? Let me give you an example. So some of the documents that have been unsealed by Judge Hippler I'll give you an example, 28 pages of exhibits that the prosecution was planning on using at trial. So they released these, and it's literally 28 pages. And there's things like interviews with family members. There's just all kinds of things. Okay. A lot of it I found interesting. So we FOIA'd for those exhibits. And I tell you what, the response that we got back really was shocking to me. We got back several of these FOIA, Freedom of Information Act or Public Records Act request forms, and the letters back from Moscow PD and the Latah County Prosecutor's Office said, if these records exist, we don't have them. You got to go somewhere else. And I was like, wait a minute, what do you mean if it exists? Of course it exists, because it's listed on a page as an exhibit that was going to be presented at trial. So in my mind, they're stonewalling. There's a whole bunch of things that are probably never going to be released. Are we ever going to get the full story, the full picture? Probably not. So, all that to say, yes, it's great. We encourage the authorities to release as many more pages as possible. But at the end of the day, you guys need to know there's still a ton that they're clamped down on, probably not going to release. And, they're not making it easy for the media and the public who we serve to find out more details.
Yeah.
Chris, what do you
And,
say?
well, right. Everybody, some people may go, well, what's the big deal? The guy's in prison, he's going to be there forever. But let me give you, right, some additional insight, something to consider. Some to consider. Okay. Just this last hearing this week, where they're fighting over the restitution. Okay. I'm telling you, this fight's not over. We've said that from day one. Once they gave him the last word, i.e., no word to nobody, he started controlling a narrative internally that has shifted the whole, the whole narrative back to the killer. I mean, just think about it. He had his attorneys out there this week arguing over whether or not he's going to pay for funeral expenses.
And by the way, it felt so disgusting watching that. It was a fight. They were talking about the cost of the urns for the victims. It made me sick. It turned my stomach. I thought, and you asked me, in my 35 plus years of covering trials and post trials, I have never seen prosecution and defense after somebody was convicted and in prison fighting over funeral costs down to the urns. Unbelievable. Never seen it before.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a no-brainer that the court should just give an order that says, he gets a certain amount of money, $100 on his books, because people are giving him money on his books up the wazoo. And what the court should do, because they have the power to do it, the Hitler has the power to do it, is to basically say, no, he doesn't need, whatever amount, the total, the big amount, whatever he's getting. That should be funneled right to a victim advocate fund. And that will fix everything pretty fast on that side of the
Yeah,
coin.
great point. Great point. Because basically, that hearing made it sound like, if he gets money from participating in something, he's not precluded from participating in anything from the media, despite what that state of Idaho law says that they referenced, because their further discussion said, well, if he gets more money, if he earns money, then it would go towards restitution first.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that there are still people out there, even though he said he did it, even though his DNA is in that house on that, that one piece of evidence at least. Okay. The fact that it's there, okay, he did it, or at least he was there. Okay, so we can't argue that fact. It is a fact. Okay. And so that's one thing. Now, is there another person involved? Highly unlikely, because nobody else, is DNA or fingerprints or anything like that. Now, they tried, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about tonight. Okay. And in this case. But as always, we remember the victims first. This is not about the killer. It is in part, but this is about these 4 college students. and their families. So that's how I always approach these, and that's how I'm going to, continue to stay focused on this. Hang on, I'm having a technical difficulty here. I don't know what's going on with my
So we're going to
streaming
be,
update.
you'll get it. We're going to be diving into the documents, and Chris has several of them that he's going to put up, and we're going to talk about it.
Well, we're going to try. Hang on.
We're going to try.
StreamYard just did an update, and now it's going ballistic. However, I have Plan B, and Plan B is always fun. Okay, so stand by. Okay. Plan B.
There you go.
All right. So we're just going to go through a PowerPoint here, and then I'm going to go back because I'm having an issue here with StreamYard, and then I'll have to upload some other stuff, and then we'll take a look at it that way. However, that said, all right. So let's go back to, as always, the beginning. And it is November 13th, 2022. The cops are there. Everybody's there. We've seen all of the reports. We've seen all the officers go in. We've heard all of the, why didn't they call 911? All of that stuff has been debated, has been kicked around, has been smashed, and everybody has different opinions. Okay. So we're not going to hash that out in any way, shape, or form. We just know that there were 4 people murdered. They were all college students, and we know their timelines. Okay, so now they're at the crime scene, and they're starting to collect evidence, and that's where this PowerPoint's going to pick up tonight. Okay. And that evidence that they collect, they're going to send it to the lab. So between the 13th and the 16th, they're collecting, photographing, removed the bodies, sent them to Seattle, all 4 of them, for an autopsy. All of that evidence is collected. We learn about all the injuries. We learn about, the brutality of that case. I'm going to show you some things tonight where they are alive while being murdered, in terms of incapacitated yet still alive. Okay. And this comes from the evidence that I've seen in these reports, not from the autopsy report. It's my experience telling me this is what's going on. So on the 16th of November at 11:32 in the morning, the interesting particular point about this document is this is a case correspondent document to the lab. So you have the lab there, i.e. their ISP lab technicians or CSI folks. They're collecting this stuff, and now they're communicating to their lab director, which is Raylene Nolan. And they're sending an email that's saying, hey, give you a heads up. This is what's going on in the subject line, Moscow quadruple homicide. And now the narrative. As of right now, the knife sheath is the only item of evidence. They have no other evidence, is what we are being told. So this is a living document. It's a fluid investigation. Investigators are all going at 100 miles an hour. The FBI has been notified. Everybody's coming in. Okay. Now, behind the scenes, what's going on is politics. All right. You have 3 trains here, maybe 4. Train number 1 is Moscow Police Department. It happens in their city, so they're going to claim ownership. Train number 2 is the university. Actually, they're going to get involved because we know from Green's book and we know from the reports from the captain, he ran over that afternoon and debriefed the university under the guise that we were looking for the kids' names. When they had the roommates right there on the street that says, these are the people who live here. So they had the names. So what the captain did was a little what we call public relations and went over and put the fruit down at the feet of Scott Green and his media relations department, because see, they'd never had anything like this and they needed help in communicating to the world about the totality of what was going on here. And they needed ways of creating bullet points. Talking points.
So they were involved, right? The University of Idaho was involved from the first hour that these murders occurred.
Day one.
Day one, and that continued on. And it's documented, as Chris says, in many different sources. And it's politics interfering with a murder investigation. They had no business being involved.
We'll get to this. Thank you. Okay. At the same time now, okay, they're having meetings over there. Train number 3, you have the lab, ISP, Idaho State Police says, hey, we're on our way. We're going to help you guys. And we're going to bring in lab resources. Okay. Train number 4 is the FBI. Okay. And the FBI is saying, well, we can help you too with money, resources, lab, whatever you need. We'll be there, lickety split. We're on our way. Okay. Now, at the same time, there could be active investigations going on from what they call a HIDTA team, high impact drug trafficking. Okay. Maybe that house was on the target list for because of the people that were living there. Okay. Not any of the, Goncalves or, I don't know who. Okay. Maybe Xana, maybe her mom, who was locked up at the time. Maybe they were doing by walks out of there. Maybe they were doing by walks out of the neighborhood. But either way, okay, there was this potential of narcotics in and out of that house. That's reality. There's no getting around it. Okay. I said that from day one. Okay. However, now you have train number 5 rolling into town, and that's WSU. Okay. So you have 2 major universities. Okay. You have the police, Moscow, Pullman, WSU. You have the FBI, maybe a task force connected to the FBI, HIDTA. And so all of this is unfolding as to, okay, who could have done this? That's the mentality of what's going on here in an investigation. Who could have done this? All right. Now we get this email on the 16th, going back to it. They have no other evidence in what we're being told. We have had some recent developments in the last few minutes. So they're getting information about things are changing rapidly. Okay. We are rolling a crime scene team up there right now, probably, and she gives the names, if they are all available, and possibly Ann. This is a clarity of who's in charge. This is Moscow PD's case. ISP is assisting but Moscow is lead. So now what's that tell us? They're telling the FBI, you guys wait over there. Okay. We'll use you, but we're not going to use your lab, your resources, your evidence techs. We are going to use our own. And so what else do we learn almost immediately? Train number 6. Well, I'll just call it the wrecking ball. Okay. Bill Thompson at the prosecutor's office is involved and will be POC, point of contact. Okay. While the autopsies are going on, Bill Thompson is playing detective. I guarantee you that's partially why this case is so confusing.
And Chris, it's a very important point to make that prosecutors in a normal homicide, even a high-profile homicide case, are not ever involved early on.
Yeah, some in high-profile stuff, you'll get the DA, okay, but they won't because they can't.
They're not going to be the point of contact.
No,
the lead investigator has to be.
Right. They cannot dictate the course of the investigation because they can't testify. Okay. What they're good for is, and I'll use Mark Bettine, who's one of the best ever. God rest his soul. Mark would show up and go, "Do you guys need a warrant?" Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get a judge on the hook. What's it look like? A, B, C, and D. Okay. They do not put on booties, clothing, and start tromping through a active crime scene because that's called contamination. Anything you bring in contaminates what's already in there. Okay. So in this particular case, though, we know right now that Thompson has already been identified as a point of contact and that he's involved in this particular case. So now you have Moscow PD, Payne. You have ISP, Gilbertson, he's a sergeant. And you have the DA, Thompson, and his sidekick. Okay. And now you have ISP, lab folks. And everybody's, putting booties on, and they're going into this active, most disturbing, most highest profile case, unless you were the chief who said he had a higher one than that. Remember with the officer in the press conference or during.
Yeah. So that's Moscow PD's former police chief said that.
Right. Who everything is, yeah, we've had bigger cases than this. No, you haven't. This thing is national. This thing is huge. Okay. We didn't even know about the other one. Okay. No disrespect. While at the same time, the bodies are up in Spokane. The autopsies are occurring today in Spokane. So the bodies have already been removed. Matthew is going to call their office to let them know what we need specifically for major case prints and that we need DNA references. Now, in this line here, the lab is told they do now have a suspect. This is the 16th of November at 11:32 in the morning.
Chris, when we looked at this first, this just jumped off the page. This was actually surprising to me to see this, that they said they had a suspect 3 days after.
Not only that, they've set up a surveillance on this individual, and they're following him. They are following him to get a sample, a DNA sample.
A surreptitious DNA sample, right, without him knowing. Spoiler alert, this person was not the killer. Somebody else.
Okay, hang on for a minute though, right?
Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. Yeah. at
Okay,
this point.
you have a lot of resources now at the crime scene, and somebody is telling the lab, hey, we have a suspect. We're following this individual. We're trying to get you guys DNA and we're going to send it to you. Okay. They are following him, and he does have, and I think it's going to say an NCIC number. I think that's why they blacked it out, or an arrest record, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. But then she says, I don't have a name to check. So they're not telling her who this individual is. Okay. Now, there's a couple of things that are really interesting, and we're going to talk about that later, which would be the fingerprinting and all this stuff. Okay. Tonight, we're going to concentrate on the DNA, and we're going to talk about the lab and all this stuff. But there's going to be a here because there's just too much to digest with all the moving parts. Okay. We expect the references and major case prints along with one of the victims' fingernail clippings, scrapings. I don't know what they will collect to be submitted tomorrow. So what the lab is doing here is setting up a game plan about they're following somebody, and we also have the victims being processed at the autopsy. We're going to get information coming from that, i.e. evidence, hair, all the stuff. Okay. And I don't want to be disrespectful to the parents. I'm not showing any of that stuff on this channel. If you want to see that, go to somebody else's channel. I'm not going to do that. Okay. What I mean by that, respectfully, go to somebody else's channel that has done that. Okay. But what this document is the lab is saying, we've got all this inbound evidence, and we need case prints, major case prints, i.e. handprints, okay? Any other prints that are available. And by the way, there's also a nugget in here that nobody has caught, okay? They wanted a foot ridge, which means one of two things. Either Xana was not wearing shoes, or Brian had taken off, was not wearing shoes, because they have a ridge on a foot that they're trying to identify. Okay. Now, that's important to understand, because that's also going to tie into the injuries, post-mortem injuries. Thompson has said, everybody has said, we have no idea why this thing goes down. We have no motive, no nothing. Okay. Well, Dr. Mercado, myself, others, we have a general idea why this thing's going down. The working theory, obviously, is related to sexual fantasy. And so if he is barefoot, then he's getting close to the situation. And it also would explain, potentially, okay, now that's a hypothesis right now, okay, but they're trying to identify that ridge. And one of the things they're saying is, well, if it's Xana's, because if she's barefoot, which would make the most sense that it's Xana, okay, they want to eliminate her. And we'll do that on part 2 here about, again, the fingerprints and stuff, or the footprints, fingerprints, etc. So now, Tina will be the person performing the process of the sheath for latents, i.e. prints. The evidence person is on vacation this week. Mariah, who is filling in, has been in contact with 3 other people. All right. The next move here. So this is an evidence submission form. So detectives fill this out and they tell the lab, hey, this is what we would like you to look at and what we would like you to do. And in this form, it says down there, down on the bottom, item number 1, and the lab and the agency has their own item number, 22M1810. So item number 1 is the lab number. That's how they're receiving it. And they put their own number on it, lab number, item 1 from the lab. It is a K-bar sheath with the USMC logo. And now the officer or the detective tells them, hey, we want you to check a general biology screen, process it, and tell us who it belongs to. And now the next page on this tells us, or this page here tells us, who do they want it to match up to? Okay. They want it to match any one of these victims and or somebody totally off the planet. Okay. Now, we get here on page 2 on the 18th, they get additional items that come in. The first items were delivered on the 16th. 2 days later, or the knife sheath's delivered on the 16th. 2 days later, they get additional information or additional items coming in. That's going to be the fingernails and all this other stuff. Okay. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So we are in literally the window of fluidity. Okay. I think they're following two theories. Now we're going to get on a couple more trains. You guys know I like trains. It's easy to my brain to stay on track. No pun intended. I think the investigation's looking at two different routes here. Well, first of all, we take into consideration who is Payne. Well, Payne is a new guy coming into detectives. Okay. In fact,
that's the case agent, the lead investigator, Brett Payne. And we know that he was only on the department 2 years and he had come over from the U.S. Army.
Yes. And he was also working narcotics. That's interesting. Because he comes in to this investigation with a mindset. Okay. And that mindset, quite frankly, is dope. Okay. How do you buy dope? How do you put a wire on a CI? How do you send in, a confidential informant to go buy dope, what they call buy walks and all this other stuff? Okay. These guys, they think, narrowly. They don't think big picture. Okay. It's a buy walk. We're going to get together. We're going to put a warrant together. We're going to hit the house. We're going to find the dope and everybody goes to jail. Okay. However, when you have 4 dead people, that's a different mindset. It's a total different mindset. So what do? They put Gilberts in with Payne to say, hey, I'm ISP, Idaho State Police, and who are they? Well, they are the agency that investigates major traffic accidents across the state. They're state police. That would be like getting the California Highway Patrol and to come in and investigate a quadruple murder when they drive the freeways all day. Now, they have a lab. And so they created a criminal investigation division, CID, and that's where he comes from, area detectives. and they're different, and in their different regions. Okay. So they get stuffed into helping agencies upon request. They call it mutual aid. So now you have this guy who comes in who feels, that, hey, I got you, man. Don't worry. Hey, I don't have much experience over here. Not a problem. I do. And I can help you, and we'll work through this together. Okay, do you think we need the FBI? And all these meetings are happening behind the scenes. Trust me. Okay. And everybody's going, well, no, because the FBI is going to want the credit. They're going to want to take over, and this is a bigger deal, for us. And we need to pat ourselves, on the back. Everybody needs promotions, which, by the way, all happened. Just check those boxes as you go down. Okay. They all occurred. Okay. And now then on the 18th, the lab gets this stuff. You got all this politics going on behind, okay, in the background. Also on the 18th, the investigation uncovers this car. Okay. On November 18th, I again attempted to view the contents of an SD card. I plugged the card into a writing blocker, and it still was not recognized by the computer. So the computer and the card were not in sync. Okay. So I used the FTK image version, blah, 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 to make an image of the card. Now that the data was on a drive, meaning he transferred the data to another drive so that he could plug it into a system that would agree with the information, or that would read the information on that SD card. In reviewing the data, I found over 13,000 individual images from the card. They appear to be individual video frames from the camera. While attempting to view the data on the card, I received a forwarded email from somebody whose sister resides at the residence. So somebody at the residence says, hey, you're having a problem with the card? Okay, I can help you. The email stated that he was viewing the video remotely when Officer Morris removed the camera. He stated he saw a suspicious vehicle in the area. So again, the citizens always solve crimes. So somebody was watching this video and says to the cops, Moscow PD, hey, there's a really suspicious car, okay, in the area, and was concerned with the video footage storage on the device being overwritten. It's so important that this guy's telling him, I'm watching this, but I'm afraid this evidence is going to get overwritten and we're going to lose it. So I was then put in touch with somebody else, another resident at the blank King Road, stated she would be back in Moscow at approximately 8:00. I met with her at a residence and asked again if she'd be willing to assist in recording screen captures on her phone from the device. I explained to this person I would replace the camera, gather the information, and then take the camera as evidence. This is the news footage we see of the officer outside of the residence unscrewing that camera on the porch. So there's a thought process here that, holy crap, okay, we're going to lose this evidence. You know what, Frank? Here's an idea. Go down and get it. Okay, go down and get it.
And thank goodness, in hindsight, this was the turning point of the case.
And look what he says down here. Okay. I reinstalled the camera in the light socket and it powered on. I was able to watch as blank access the footage on the camera. During this time, the camera showed a vehicle entering the area at approximately 0356 and leaving at a high rate of speed at approximately 0420. Now, here's the interesting part, guys. If this wasn't interesting enough, they dumped 2,300 pages of information on a Friday evening, and they tucked all of this stuff in the middle of all of that. Because you know how I read this? It tells me almost immediately they didn't know what they were doing. Because this is to the next house over from where the murders occurred. And that tells us nobody canvassed immediately. And that the lead detective did not say in the roundup, okay, Chuck, go find any cameras you got in this neighborhood. Get out there and make it happen. Frank, you go knock on doors, kiss babies, shake hands, find out if anybody saw, heard, or, anything. Make it happen. You, Frank, or you, Bobby, you're going to run the crime scene here. Okay. Yada, yada, yada. You know what they were more concerned? Go ahead, honey.
To your point. No, just to your point, because this is the first time I'm really thinking about what you're laying out here. If they had gone and canvassed the neighborhood, not even the whole neighborhood, next door, either side, that just in that immediate area, they would have come across this person and the video. To your point, they didn't do that. They didn't gumshoe it and get out there and just knock on doors and talk to people in the first hours and days after the murders.
Right. But what they did do is put booties on Thompson for him to go into the house and do a scene view, which he should have never been anywhere near that place until everybody knew, is all the evidence gone? Is it collected?
And by the way, putting on booties and going in the house that he allowed to be torn down years before the trial. Oh, and by the way, he never even took the case to trial. Right. And now we hear this week, and I'm going on a little tangent here, but we heard this week at the restitution hearing, oh, Bill Thompson says, I made a mistake, quote, I own it, that I told the families that they could be reimbursed for these travel expenses, but apparently I got it wrong. Again, a minor point. And then the judge was like, yeah, but the plea deal is a legal contract. And he agreed to restitution in the legal contract. Okay. All this to say, this is the same guy. This is the same prosecutor.
Great point. And this is why, if you haven't watched Steve and Kristi the other night, they have this righteous indignation, for lack of a better term. But so now that tells us, as the investigation's flowing, okay, nobody, to your point just a second ago, now they may have gone and knocked on the door and nobody answered. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. However, okay,
Go back.
They should
wait till they get home. Go ahead.
Somebody should have looked up and said, holy crap, we got a camera here. Okay. And let's get this camera like now, like yesterday. Because then you can be on the phone saying, hey, instead of trying to figure out who the 4 people are in the house at the university, okay, they could have run that address through all kinds of systems that law enforcement has access to. They could have found the girl and said, hey, we're standing on your porch. Can we get your camera, or at least get access to it? Instantaneously, 99% of all people will say, absolutely, I'm not here right now, but I'm on my way home. And they would have stood there, wait till that person comes in, and in that very moment, on the 16th or the 17th, they would have had that video. However, the good news is, as they like to tap themselves on the back constantly, is on the 18th, 2 days later, which is close enough, not really, but close, okay, they get this video and they're able to view it. Now, look at this down at the bottom. On November 19th, while reviewing the video's location, are located at 0356 and 0420, it appeared the vehicle left the area and may have been traveling on Willetta Drive, etc. I got to go back to the paragraph above that. I jumped too far ahead. I reinstated the camera in the light socket and powered on. I was able to watch and access the footage on the camera. During this time, the camera showed a vehicle entering the area at approximately 0356 and leaving at a high rate of speed at approximately 0420. Now, we know now that this is Brian Kohberger. And at that moment, they had now a vehicle. They had a car. Okay, why is that important? Because one of the lab people on the 19th is also made aware of that car. Detective Talbert received information that there is a video of a car leaving the scene at 1122 King Road the night of the homicide occurrence. There is confirmed tire marks still present at the scene. Now, they start thinking about a car on the 19th and the 18th of November. Within 5 days, they're thinking about a car. Now, this is where the FBI comes in. Because now they have this video. They're going to fire this off to the feds, which they do in Quantico or in Salt Lake. I can't remember where. And they sent it to this FBI guy who says, yep, here's my assessment. It looks like a Hyundai. Here could be the original years, which he later corrects it and says, well, I'm not positive. Here's a range of years. Okay, because the body styles are pretty much the same. Okay. And now the feds are involved. But on the 25th, okay, now in between all of this, lab reports are taking place, DNA is taking place. Okay, they're checking boxes, they're sending, reports over, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But I'm going to stay on the track of the car right now because Karen and I have been very critical of the authorities for not ringing the doorbell of Brian Kohberger.
And to this day, and I will never understand why they didn't do it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because look at this email here. They know what they're looking for. This is November 25th. Now, we're 12 days into the homicide. However, the agencies are sending emails around and they're communicating with each other. According to Moscow PD and the FBI, so that means the feds have already looked at the car. Now, remember, they see the car on the 18th. So within maybe 5 or 6 days, the FBI has already come back and said, hey, it's a Hyundai. This is what you're looking for. Okay. We are looking. Now, this is a confidential email from the commander of the Pullman Police Department. They're not even the lead agency. So imagine the flow of information at the lead agency, Moscow PD and ISP. They know what kind of car they're looking for. There's no question in my mind. A 2013 Hyundai Elantra that is light colored white, tan, or silver. Okay, 3 different colors it potentially could be. And we have the police chief at Washington State University go, well, that was the wrong year. Okay, well, what if it was any of these other 2 colors, tan or silver? Would you have stopped it then? Would you have communicated with the driver at that point? Okay, and my camera makes me look like I'm looking off, but My eyes aren't cockeyed going over here. I'm just
And Chris, it bears repeating. So when I interviewed, and by the way, when we sat down with Washington State University Police Chief Gary Jenkins, he's now since retired. By the way, that video is linked in the description below. So after our live, if you want to go watch it, I'd highly encourage you to watch it. It's not that long. And you can see how I was trying to pin him down and it didn't make sense. And Chris, I just think it's worth repeating. For
Yeah.
people who have never investigated a murder, being off, having the make and model, but the year is off, is that significant? Just make a counterpoint to what Chief Jenkins told us that, well, it wasn't the right year, so we didn't forward that over to Moscow PD, which was a lie. And I'm going to call it out as a lie because we now know that they knew what car they were looking for.
Yes, and let's raise that pot of gold, Karen. Who's involved in the investigation day one?
The University of Idaho and Washington State University.
And
the colleges, the for-profit big business colleges.
And the DA.
Yeah, Bill Thompson.
Are we the public to believe that the district attorney who's involved as the point of contact for the lab work is not also aware that they're looking for a white Elantra, a silver Elantra, a tan Elantra? Are we to believe that?
Well, of course he knew because he saw the video 3 days after the murders.
Right. Okay.
Of the car leaving the crime scene.
So now we have a cloak of, what was the in Get Smart, the cone of silence? Remember where Max and Chief and 99 would go into the cone of silence and it would come out of the ceiling? Okay. Okay.
What a joke. Yeah,
right.
Keep going.
So everybody knows now that there is no question that Thompson is knee deep into this case. And that's why I think they're making decisions based on how do I present this in trial versus let's catch this guy like now. Okay. Because a lot of times DAs will say, well, we can't use that. Okay. I don't care if you can use it. I'm going to go out and get it. And then you figure out why you can't use it. Okay. That's the two systems that work alongside each other, but are different, i.e. the investigation. You go out and you collect all the rocks and you hand it to the defense and say, here's your bag of rocks. You figure out which one's not in there. But when you have a DA involved, the DA says, well, why are we collecting these rocks? We can't use the rocks. And how do we know this? This is the way Santa Claus thinks. Okay. Just listen to him. Just listen to him the other day at the restitution hearing. Oh, well, I made a mistake. I didn't realize that. Well, what do you mean? You just did a death penalty deal. How do you? And so this tells me a tremendous amount of information about why this case did not flow correctly. There's more here. Please BOLO for that vehicle. Be on the lookout. They're telling everybody in this agency, Pullman Police Department this commander is telling everybody in his agency, we're looking for this car, guys and gals. Be careful. Be careful. It could be a quadruple homicide suspect. Do not run the plates through Whitcomb, i.e. don't go on the air and run it through dispatch. Run it through your MDC, meaning your mobile terminal inside of your vehicles. So if they come across a Hyundai of any of those colors and any of those years, They're to run it through their computer aided dispatch in their car, their MDT. Okay. Do not discuss what you are doing over the radio. This is nuts. Okay. This is nuts. Do not ask Whitcomb to do anything regarding this matter. Hey, Sarge, yeah. Or here's a hypothetical, okay? Brian Koger driving around town on the 25th. Okay. Well, guess what? He's guaranteed. A cop's going to pull up behind him in Pullman, at least, run his plate. He's not going to tell dispatch that he's running the plate. He's not going to get on the radio and tell anybody else, hey, I have a match for that homicide vehicle. I'm running I can't tell you I'm running the plate. Okay. Hey, I've got, it's going to be a game of charades. Okay. Well, I think I have, maybe you guys figure it out. Okay. Now keep track of what you find. Hey, Sarge, last night, at 10:30, I saw a white Hyundai. Really? Yeah. I ran the plate. Okay. Yeah, there was a white male driving it with two dead bodies, also additional. I could see them from the back, but I didn't want to stop them. Come on. What are you, crazy? Really? Okay. Did you log it? Absolutely, Sarge. Okay. Well, that's wonderful. Okay. Hey, make sure, keep track of what you find. Sergeant Engel has been assigned as the Pullman PD liaison with Moscow. Make sure you tell Engel what you did. Right. Hey, and also one other thing. Yeah. Don't you dare disseminate this information with anyone outside of this building. Yeah, no problem, Sarge. No problem. So this is a quadruple homicide suspect vehicle that they're looking for. All my retired LE guys out there, okay, in chat, chime in, because I know what you're thinking. Okay. Now it gets better. It gets better. And we're not even at the evidence yet. So on the 27th is when at 1:46 p.m., Payne decides to weigh in with this BOLO.
Again, he's Brett Payne, the lead investigator on the case for Moscow PD.
Okay. So on the 25th, this confidential email goes out to everybody saying, don't say anything to anybody.
But they had enough to put out a BOLO to law enforcement in Pullman, Washington. So they knew enough on November 25th to put it out.
Okay. So now, great point. Now you have a lot still moving in this case. Okay. You have the lab work still going 1,000 miles an hour. You have fingerprints coming in, case file prints. And by the way, they're also trying to access the Department of Defense fingerprint database. And I think it's for that Army guy, they're thinking, okay, we got to eliminate this guy. So they're trying to get into that database as well. And that's why probably his name is blacked out in a lot of these reports. Okay. And they're also trying to figure out who this other individual is that based on the lab, they have a suspect that they're following. Okay. And so I think, again, there's two trains here. You got a drug train going because they think it's a drug hit. Okay. And then you have this other train that's going, well, because it's a drug hit, we really don't need to go canvassing that stuff right now. It's not a priority. Okay. And when they do realize it's a priority, boom, they get an aha moment where this car now becomes important to Payne. However, but not important enough to tell law enforcement you could be killed. Because this person driving this car apparently may have already killed 4 people. But not, and this again goes back to the Army versus law enforcement experience. Okay, don't misunderstand me. I love you both. However, Army people are real good at destroying and killing, like Marines. That's what they do. That's what they do. And law enforcement is really good at canvassing, kissing babies, shaking hands. Tell me a little bit about you, that kind of stuff. Because
So what we're looking at, did Brett Payne send this note out?
yes,
And if so, to who?
this is an email to everybody. Okay? Everybody.
All the teams working it,
Right.
all the agencies.
Because he says they're all. I want to update everyone on the current progress of the investigation. We know everyone is chomping at the bit to get in and help, and rightfully so, and rightly so. To that end, you see that first statement right there? They're not accepting help right then. Up till this
Well,
email.
not only that, it doesn't sound like it comes from an experienced person.
Correct.
We know everyone, quote, "We know everyone's chomping at the bit." Chris, you've worked well over 300 murders. Even when you had double murders, even when you had super high profile murder, as a lead detective, you would have never put that language in because it just speaks to inexperience. Like, hey, everybody, we got a live one. Let's all jump in. That's not how homicide has worked.
Well, all of this here is from a military frame of mind. And you can't blame him for that. Right?
But does it belong in civilian homicide investigation?
No, well, that's the only reference point that he has is how to write as if you're going into, Kabul and you don't want anybody to know that you've got a laser on somebody and they're going to blow him up. That's how this is written. Okay, because look how the rest of it goes. To that end, we want to share what information we have to keep everyone in the loop and up to date on the things to watch for. Also, we are always open to new ideas. Please let me know if you have anything you think ought to be tried. That means they're not sure what to do.
Yeah, so he's soliciting ideas from the group, but the lead homicide investigator would have been the one in the house, understanding, in theory, all the pieces coming together, the evidence collection. He should have been the person, to your point, what you always talk about, what you learn from Jigsaw John, is after everything is taken out of the house, to go in there, sit quietly, and listen. I'm just talking more theoretical. If that was done, and lead investigator would never send out, "Hey, everybody, if you've got any guesses about this, let me know."
Well, this is a flow, what you're talking about. Okay. And somebody with experience knows how this is going to go before they even get there. They're processing, they're getting their notebook out. They're writing down at 0900, I was called out of my house for a quadruple homicide, 1122 King Street. At 0932, I arrived, 1122 King Street. Present were detectives, blah, blah, blah. And the list goes on. This is somebody that doesn't know what the next step's going to be. Okay. And it's clear here because he says, lastly, this may not be all of the info, but it's the most pertinent to where we are currently. So now it happens on the 13th, and this is the 27th, 2 weeks later. Okay. And what's he telling them about 2 weeks later? He's telling them, hey, on the 18th, we saw a car. We sent it to the FBI. They identified it as a Hyundai, but we're not going to tell you guys until the 27th.
That makes no sense, and none of them have answered for that.
Correct.
This is a very key, important point of this investigation that none of the authorities have ever answered. They've danced around it, they've avoided it, and this would have come out in trial.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely would have come out in trial.
Would
And
assume,
again, it goes to our point we keep hammering home, and I'm the long view on this is, had they shared this information a lot earlier, potentially the killer, BK, would have never been allowed to leave to number one, thoroughly clean the car. Number two, they could have had a buccal swab early on. They buccal swabbed 5 other males. And he would have driven cross country. There never would have been a need for the FBI to canvass his parents' home in Pennsylvania, do a trash pull, and have to do DNA the long way. That's like the long way, the long math. Okay. That's why this is so important. That's why this is so key. And we've been saying this for a while now with these documents coming out.
yeah. And what they've done is they've sugarcoated it with, well, there were 22,000 Hondais. Okay, really? Not in that area. There weren't 22,000 Hondais in Moscow or in WSU or, wherever. I think there were 11 that they had to flush through. And by the way,
and then on Washington State University campus, remember, 2 belonged to 2 separate women, and the third belonged to BK.
That's right.
And oh, by the way, when it was parked outside of the apartment, again, law officer after law officer connected with the case, never went up, knocked on the door, interviewed him, and got a buccal swab.
And here's the reason why. Okay. This info is law enforcement sensitive. Do not distribute. That is, fine. Okay. However, he then qualifies it. This email is only going to MPD, Pullman PD, and WSU PD. The attached flyer is extremely sensitive and must not be shared outside of your agency. Okay. So now he's got the flyer about the car. Okay. You know what? In an active homicide with a potential maniac who's killed 4 people, the moment you get the car or a potential car, Karen, you were a PIO, what would you do with it?
You put it out and get the public's help immediately. You don't wait.
Because now those 22,000, Hondais get shrunk down to their little, hello, can I help you? Yeah. Hey, this is, Judy over at WSU. Yeah. Hi, Judy. Hey, I'm an apartment complex, bing, bing, bing. And also there's a white Hyundai out here with Pennsylvania plates on it. Okay. Really? What's the license plate? Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. We'll have an officer out to check. Appreciate you calling. Click. Boom. Okay. Not rocket science. The vehicle in the flyer is of interest to the MPD investigation. However, you must understand, you are ordered not to stop, detain, or contact the driver. That's military talk. That is not police officer talk. I, as a case agent in a homicide, have never ordered patrol officers or anyone not to contact a quadruple suspect vehicle. Ever. Do you know why? Because that person can do one of 2 things: hurt or kill somebody else because they're still on the loose, or worst case, the officers themselves could get killed or hurt. This is an officer safety FUBAR. Okay. This is a problem. And this is why, this case has so many cracks in it. And this is why the officers, when they get this information, do not go and talk to Brian Kohberger. When they had him at WSU within 24 hours of this bulletin, they had him.
It goes against police practice. Am I overstating that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because
Meaning,
look at the next sentence.
got a suspect in the apartment, the wanted vehicle is parked outside, and that was a day after this, 11/28. That's only what Washington State University Police said, right? For all we know, Brett Payne drove by the apartment complex. I'm just it's a hypothetical. Not that I know he did it, but maybe Brett Payne drove by the Pullman apartment and saw it. I mean, it's mind-blowing. I don't understand. And by the way, BOLO means be on the lookout. The whole idea is it's a public expression. Hey, everybody, we want to tell you to be on the lookout. Not this secret, hey, if you're one of the 10 or 15 people in this group of police officers that we have on this case, we're only going to share it with you guys. What's the point? The whole point is to get the public's help and input.
Okay, so he says here, unless it's a life or death emergency. Okay, so the only reason you can talk to this person driving that car was if it's a life and death emergency. You know who didn't get that memo? The state troopers that stopped him twice going to Pennsylvania. If Brian Kohberger wanted to, if he was of the frame of mind back then and he had access to a weapon, he in theory could have shot those officers with his dad in the car. Now, he didn't. And everybody's saying, yeah, but that didn't happen. Okay, fine. Great. Okay. But he did kill 4 people. So he's in a preservation mode and an escape mode. So he's desperate. But Payne has sent a BOLO out to just a certain amount of police departments. That means he didn't put it in NCIC, National Crime Information Center, so that when those 2 guys would have stopped him, it would have potentially popped up as, hey, we're Moscow Police Department. We're looking for a white Hyundai Elantra, years, possibly, whatever those years are, 2011 through 2013. Be on the lookout. Notify us if you stop one. Okay. Now, think about that traffic stop. Officer makes a stop. He runs it up and boom, he gets an NCIC hit of a similar vehicle utilized in a quadruple homicide. Now that officer walks up and goes, hey, where are you coming from? Oh, well, didn't you hear about the shootout at Washington State University? No, I didn't. Okay. But I do have this BOL for a similar type of vehicle that you're driving that's involved in a quadruple homicide.
Well, Chris, to your point, they probably would have done a hot stop with guns drawn.
Maybe.
On the freeway.
Anything goes.
Yeah, I mean.
With one exception. They knew. And that was a bait stop. See what you can see, feel what you can feel. That's what.
And when asked about it after the plea deal and the sentencing, Gilbertson and Payne both said, oh no, that wasn't a bait stop.
And maybe not. But, it's interesting. That's what dope people do, dope cops. You hear the radio crack. Yeah, what's up? Hey, I need you to stop this guy. He just did a by walk over here. Can you see if he's got anything in the car? Find some PC to stop this guy. Roger that. He stops him. Hey, get an FI while the undercovers are sitting back about a block, half block away watching the traffic stop. And when he drives away, okay, the detective, they get together on what they call an 87. Everybody pulls alongside and says, what do you got? Hey, his name is Frank Johns. Here's where he lives. Blah, 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 blah. That would be a dope cop's mentality. This would be a dope cop's mentality. This is not a homicide cop's mentality. Okay. So now I want to keep going. If you observe a vehicle similar one to the on the flyer, please gather license plate number as discreetly as possible and communicate that information via phone, MDC, email only. That's the only way they're going to communicate. Call the ISP number on the flyer to report these vehicles in order to keep the flow of information consistent. Do not air any of this information over the radio. So they're worried about somebody listening to the radio. Okay. I would be more worried about the suspect out on the street. Okay. And now we get into the really fun part here. Please contact me or Sergeant Gilbertson, ISP. All right. So let's keep going. Do not err and blah, blah, blah. Since the initial phases of the investigation, we've learned the following. All the residents returned home at approximately 0200. At approximately 0330, a vehicle of interest, the one in the BOL, arrives at the area via these streets and begins to drive laps around the victim's house. So he knows the whole narrative now by the 27th by watching that vehicle, by watching that video. But he is not bothered to tell his comrades, his friends, about all the stuff that he knows. He's keeping it close to the chest. Okay? It bothers me. The vehicle approaches Taylor, makes a loop. It then begins to make short loops around Paradise, blah, blah, blah. Upon interviewing, during this time at approximately 0440, a DoorDash driver drops off food at 1122. Upon interviewing the driver, she told us she saw a male in a four-door sedan drive next to her as she was walking in search of the address. She saw a male in a four-door sedan. That's what she said. The DoorDash driver. Okay. Remember the girl that got arrested says, I'm the DoorDash driver. Okay. And she says, I saw him that night. Well, that can be taken one of two ways. Did she physically, was she able to identify him? Maybe not, but she may have seen a male. Okay. I don't know. I'm just reading what he said to everybody. The DoorDash driver leaves, and then the suspicious vehicle returns to the King Queen loop. So that means he may have seen her. The vehicle apparently stops somewhere on the loop. We suspect the southwest upper lot behind 1122 at approximately 0408. So just where we've said behind the house, up there where he's used as a perch to spy on these girls and to stalk them. But there's no stalking. Not according to the district, not according to Thompson. These girls were not stalked in any way, shape, or form. Okay. The camera on 1122 captures audio of what sounds like a struggle at 0417 or approximately 0420. The suspicious vehicle exits at a very fast and leaves via Walenta. This is the last time this vehicle is caught on any camera we have, so it's likely, not certain, the vehicle exited off of Constanoga there. All right. We are confident whoever is in this vehicle, at a bare minimum, heavily involved in what took place. So they are confident the person driving that car is involved somehow. They're very confident. That's the investigator saying, at a bare minimum, they're involved. We're very confident. Okay. That being so, the fact we are looking for this vehicle is critical to the investigation. So why not stop it? Why not?
Makes no sense.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
Ring the doorbell. Hey, are you Brian Kohlberger? Yeah. Please follow the instructions on the BOLO.
And, all they have to say is, "You know what? We screwed up. We should have rang his doorbell. We should have contacted him that night we had the car." But they're not willing to say any of that.
No, they're not. No, they're not. Please, because here's another order. Please follow the instructions on the BOL and do not tell anyone what we are looking for or why or air anything on the radio. So whatever you do, say nothing to anybody. Okay. In addition, we are awaiting numerous lab results which could provide crucial results. We have heavily vetted each of the people directly linked to the victims and are now actively sifting through thousands of leads, gigs worth of data, and hundreds of interviews. So basically, he's saying in the first 2 weeks, they have gone through all the people within the inner circle, and now we're finally getting to all the other important stuff. Again, it goes back to what I said at the crime scene. Frank, you've got this. Bob, you've got this. Hank, you've got this. And then as a case agent, you cut them loose. Go do your thing. Okay. And then you meet every single day as a team and say, Frank, what did you find out? Well, Chris, you're not going to believe this. We got a video. You got to be kidding me. Fill me in. What about you, Bob? Well, hey, I sent the lab, the sheath, they got all this stuff. They're running it down. I told them we're chasing somebody. Okay, Chuck, who are we chasing? Well, we got a couple of possibles. We got this Army guy who's a nut job, who's into, just craziness. There was dope in and out of that house. Okay, let's run those lanes down. Make sure we get the Haida guys involved and make sure tomorrow have them here because I want to hear that information. Okay. So now they're just getting to it on the 27th. None of that was happening through the flow. And that's where the FBI comes in. That's where you hand 1,000 leads to the FBI. And you say, we don't have the resources to run these all down right now. Boom. Here you go, guys. Because they're real good at that. They're very good at that. That's what they do. Okay. Please keep an eye out for the, let's see here. And hundreds of interviews. Numerous search warrants have been served to including 2 on the apartment at Queen Street, 500 Queen. This is the droplets by the door frame. They thought it was a blood trail going up to an apartment. Please keep an eye out for the vehicle in the BOLO, especially as students return. They're thinking it could have been a student.
Gosh.
Duh. We are fairly certain of the vehicle we are looking for. Per the FBI specialists who do such things, no plate information is known as of right now. Please let me know if you have any questions or suggestions. Stay safe and happy hunting. Payne. Okay, so what happens? Right, Karen?
Yeah, I mean, that happy hunting just really kind of bothered me. I don't know why. It just seemed almost childish. Like there's a gravity, there's a seriousness. And I feel like it's not reflective, but that could just be me being critical in hindsight.
I hate doing this. I hate doing this. But you know me. I call it as I see it. All right. So now within a couple of days, after the next day, they find the car at WSU. He's told the night before, hey, it could be a student. So that motivates somebody to go to the computer system and saying, well, I'm going to check all the students to see if there's a white Hyundai. And the 2 officers find the white Hyundai. But the chief says, yeah, we made a mistake. We read that email that Payne sent and everybody else, but, we didn't contact them. In fact, we didn't even tell them.
Well, and here's what's interesting too. So that was November 28th. Remember, we talked about it here on several different episodes. Let's just take you back for a second. Washington State University police officers on November 28th got the BOLO, Okay. And so they knew, hey, we better look for a white Elantra on campus. And within a half hour, because this was the night shift, right, Chris?
Yep.
Remember, it was like 12:30 in the morning. One of these Washington State University police officers drives by BK's apartment and sees the white Elantra, and he makes it confirmation. Well, we've been submitting public records requests for that police officer and the other Washington State University police officer.
Their report.
We asked for their reports. We asked for the CAD. Take us back to that night. And what did the officers say? What did the officer do? Because at some point, we know, because Brett Payne put all this in the affidavit, the arrest warrant affidavit, December 30th, when they arrested BK in Pennsylvania. So we're just saying, open the books. We want to see WSU police officers report or CAD, radio call, whatever it might be from that night. Okay, what do you think we were told? Not going to shock you. No report. We're not getting the report. It's unclear. They don't have to say there was a report or there wasn't a report, but all of our inquiries and requests for all this stuff has been punted, meaning, okay, thank you for submitting your request. We get till next April of 2026 to decide whether we're going to release it. Totally ambiguous, totally not transparent. So to me, that's a really interesting nugget in this case. If we can see what that officer, because Chris and I have hypothesized, we've talked about this so many times, like he must have gotten on the radio he must have communicated back to the watch commander on duty, maybe Brett Payne. Did Brett Payne get a phone call? Hey, the white Elantra's parked outside of a Washington State University student named Brian Koberger outside the apartment. Like, we want to know, was he told, don't act? Did he know not to act? There's just a lot of questions. And I don't see why Washington State University won't release it, but they won't.
Yeah, it's really problematic right now. Maybe they will at some point. They're going to drip it out like everybody else and tuck it into all the lab reports like they have other stuff, okay, and just kind of overwhelm the public. YouTubers just overwhelm everybody, and that way they only, they pick the nail clippings and the photographs and the knife sheath and all this other stuff, okay, and therefore, there's nothing else to see here, other than this, couple of things here, but there's really nothing here. Where I'm coming from the law enforcement perspective here is, did they know already who he was? I'm getting a clearer picture of, well, wait a minute. You don't send this BOLO out. You don't tell them it could be a student. And then they find a student with the exact same car. And then they're told, hey, if you find it, don't do anything. Whatever you do, don't do anything. Okay. Whatever you do, don't contact them. Just, send us a Hallmark card that you found a white Elantra at WSU. Okay. And if you write a report about it, by golly, only make sure it goes into one lane, because that's what they did, is they created a secondary report
database,
which is unheard of in a homicide, because
and I would question, I'm just saying, I would question the legality of that, because I get that investigators have a lot of leeway in keeping things quiet while they're investigating, of course. But at some point, it has to be made public. These are public servants. They work for the people, and everyone seems to forget that.
Right. And so, all of this is going on. There's a lot of things happening simultaneously. Everybody gets that. Search warrants for, the phones of the victims, their search history, a lot of that. They've got the CAS team involved, the FBI, who are good enough, to kind of get the phone pings, all of that stuff starting to happen. Okay. Those reports aren't necessarily always coming back so fast, but there's a lot of lanes being moved here. We get that. Okay. But the big lane is this car. Okay. So now we jump to December 5th, couple of days after the car is discovered on WSU campus. This is another Idaho State Police evidence submission form, meaning we want you to check some things at the lab for us. Okay? What do you got? Well, we've got a name, 2 names. And what we want you to do is check to see if a guy by the name of Brian Koberger, and then the other name above, which I don't know who that's going to be. It's probably the Army guy. Okay, the drug guy. Okay. And the lab says, okay, fine, submit the evidence. What do you have? Well, check it against this knife sheath. Item number 1. Okay. No problem. So now here's a question. Where'd they get this name on the 5th of December? Where did that just come out of the air? Did it, what kind of environment did this come out of? We have not heard a logical answer to this submission here. And we have tried over and over again, trust me, at this end. Okay. Now, what I think is going on is they knew this name, Brian Koberger, because the moment Payne put in that email, it could be a student. That means somebody flushed conversations with the University of Idaho, WSU, all of the administrative staff, and said, where are the weirdos on campus? And are any of them driving a white Hyundai Elantra? This is my theory. It's only a theory. All of a sudden, all of those complaints, all of that information, all of the, hey, we're about ready to dump this guy. Hey, this is the guy that the professor said, well, if we give him a degree, we're going to end up, and she was right because we're talking about it today.
Okay. And she called him a predator.
Right. And
her word, predator.
And qualified it because that's what she studies and teaches. And she says, we will hear about this guy one day. So my question has been, and you and I, Karen, have worked relentlessly about this, is when did they know? Because we know now they knew at least on December 5th.
Well, my theory is they knew it the night of November 28th when that WSU police officer ran white Elantras in the database, came up with BK's apartment, drove over there, verified that the white Elantra was parked outside of BK's apartment. I think they had it November 28th. But the question is, what was done? Or more importantly, why was something not done if they had the name and the car at that point?
Right. And that's been the golden ticket to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Because Payne is making it clear he's not saying anything to anyone. Okay. And when he testified in the prelim, he was kind of like homina, homina, homina. Okay. Now, do I think this is a conspiracy? and that they don't have the right guy. No. Okay. Brian Kohberger, based on the evidence at hand, they got the right guy. However, the investigation, part of this, and one of the reasons I think Thompson gave in so quickly is for what we're talking about and others are talking about on social media, that they didn't know what they were doing. And it was a cluster. And Ann Taylor, when she came up with the other suspect theory, she was going to jump on the bandwagon here and, quite frankly, eviscerate the investigation. And because, again, we go back to, remember, simultaneously, you have the name on December 5th of Brian Kohberger. It's right in front of you, but you also have another name that's blacked out above you. And then you have multiple other subjects who potentially could be the source of the evidence. So they're looking at 5 subjects. These are the 5 buccal swabs. Remember we talked about, but they have 2 suspects that they're narrowing in on. And one of them is Brian Kohberger. It's right in front of you. It's right in front of us. Okay. So now it gets better. So they want them to take a look at this knife and tell us, what's on this knife. Okay. Now remember, they've had this DNA evidence. It came out before, okay, that 12-5 report. Okay. All right. So now this is where we now get into the sequence of, 1, 1, 1, 2, et cetera. So I'm going to shift real fast. Hang on for a minute. I've got to upload that other page because I want to show a couple of things. Actually, you know what? I'll stay here for a moment and then I'll do it when we're done. Because this is really important and it goes towards the brutality of this incident. All right. This is, the backside, and you can see where the lab folks have identified, spots and DNA and where they're going to swab and where they're going to get, evidence and who's the sources. Some of it's Maddie, some of it's Kaylee's combined, some of it's an unknown male, which is male 1, ends up being Brian. And then there's also, some mixtures in there. They can't, say there's no 2 males though. Okay. It's all mixed together. So it's degraded basically. That's the bottom line of what this report's going to say. Go ahead, Karen.
No, you keep going. I'm listening.
Okay. I'm going to come back to this one because this is critical. Okay. This particular slide. Okay. This is where they've tested it on the sides. You can see where the lab folks, and I'm not going to go into depth because a lot of folks have already done this. I just want you guys to get a general, idea. This is where she's trying to see the blood spatter a little bit closer. Okay. This is where, they're testing inside, they're testing outside, they tested around, the exterior of the sheath as a whole. They test at the top, they test at the snap, and they get the best match on the snap. Okay. The best match on the snap. And here's that report. Swab of the front snap. And by the way, this report's, the evidence comes in on the 16th, and this report is written on the 18th, 2 days later. Okay. And the item they test, 1-1, the front of the snap, 1-2, which correlates with those pictures. Okay. 1-3 swab, 1-4 swabs, stains in the back. Conclusion. Results from presumptive chemical test performed on item 1 indicates the presence of blood. Item 1 was swabbed for DNA collection. Okay. This is the big evidence. I don't think they would have had a hard time proving this case based on all the stuff that I'm seeing. Not that they couldn't have. I think it could have been a strong circumstantial case without this DNA. Okay. But they needed this DNA to push it over the top. Trace evidence collected, item 1. Known reference samples from Maddie, Xana, Ethan, and Kaylee are required for DNA comparisons. Please contact the laboratory regarding the status of those known references. So they get the DNA first of this unknown male, or at least they've collected it. Okay. Now they're going to send it and test. And they're saying, when you get everybody else's DNA, send it to us, or at least samples, so we can test it. Okay. That's what's happening in this report. Now, they do get those samples on between the 16th and the 18th, because they've got one suspect's name crossed out and 2 subjects' names crossed out. And then this lab tech is laying out, it's a comparison against all of those people above, and they've got the victims listed as well. Okay. And they say down there, the conclusion, we get DNA. And this is how we did it. Okay. And here are the profiles. The DNA profile obtained from item 1.1, which is the snap of the knife, was determined to be from an unknown male. Ethan Chapin, blah, 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 and blah, 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 are not the source of DNA on this item. So they've eliminated 2 males on the item. Ethan's and that other guy listed, whoever that is. This turned the investigation away from that other guy. That's what happened.
And what date was this,
18th,
if you know?
The 18th. Okay. Now, are not the source of the DNA, excuse me, the 22nd, or no, the 20th, 2 days later, 20th.
November 20th.
Yep.
Okay.
So they've eliminated that other guy November 20th based on DNA. So whoever that other unknown male is, if it's the Army guy that they're trying to get the prints through DOD, if it's, whatever that guy, I forget his name, Kilpatrick or something like that. I don't even know if that's the guy.
Well, we're not even going to say it because we don't know.
Well, he's deceased. Yeah. So, but
there you go.
I'm suspicious of that because they are trying to get into Department of Defense fingerprint database.
So if he was eliminated November 20th, it took the lead investigator a full week later to put out a BOLO for the White Elantra, but it really wasn't a BOLO. It was just kind of it was kind of a whisper campaign just to Pullman, PD, right? The universities, ISP, the BOLO that's not a BOLO. It took them a week later to really turn their attention to the car that they had from almost the beginning. The first couple of days they had that. They had the video.
So they throw it into CODIS. Look at here. This DNA profile was entered into the Combined DNA Index System, or CODIS, to be routinely searched against the database, i.e. anybody that's ever been in prison, or whatever, arrested, and they've swabbed them and it's in CODIS, okay, they're going to measure against that. The case agency will be notified in the events of a profile match. So on the 20th, they've got DNA, it's going into CODIS, and they're going to be notified. The DNA profile obtained from item mixture of DNA with a major profile, which matches that obtained from the known residence sample of Kaylee, assuming a two-person mixture, meaning Kaylee's DNA is in it. Okay. And by, 700, basically they have to go to another planet to say it's not Kaylee, it's her. Okay. More likely to be seen as a result of a mixture of DNA from Kaylee and then anybody unrelated. Random selection individuals that results in two unrelated individuals randomly selected from the general population, which means you're not going to find another person in the general population that put this DNA there other than Kaylee. If you want to match it to anybody else, it's going to be a random match because the idea that Kaylee didn't do this, you'd have to go to another planet. Madison Mogen, same principle. It's also Maddie's. It's a match between Maddie's, Kaylee's, and this other unknown matched individual, meaning they don't know who the male is, but they know it's basically Kaylee and Maddie. There's no question. And then they exclude and eliminate Ethan and Xana, are excluded as contributors. So on the sheath, you have Maddie, this unknown male, and Kaylee. Okay. That's whose DNA is on that sheath. Okay. There's no question about it. That's scientifically proven. Okay. So now we get to the 28th of December. All of these items are collected at the house in Pennsylvania. Okay. All of these items are collected in Pennsylvania at a search warrant at the killer's house. Okay. Or it's a trash pull of some sort. Something's going on because they end up matching a Q-tip.
Which is pretty gross if you ask me, looking at that.
Yeah, 87-1. It says, based upon evaluation of the DNA profile obtained from item 87-1, male E and that previously obtained from item 1-1, male A, male E cannot be excluded as being the biological father of male A. So they pull this Q-tip, test it, and say, we got the dad of the killer. We can't exclude him. And then, so that's how they get him. They get him on earwax. I got to say, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So what I'm not convinced though, because remember the FBI was sitting up on this house in Pennsylvania and the Pennsylvania State Police. So at some point they do a trash pull. And this is where they pulled all this garbage. And that's why in some of these photographs down in this last lab dump, you see all the trash, with coffee cups and all of those were all tested. And it comes back to females that, are consistent with the male, i.e. it could be the daughters, could be a wife. Okay. A lot of these other things are going on here. Okay. That's what this report's all about. All right. Okay. So simultaneously though, there is also fingerprint evaluations going on. Okay. And on the 5th of December, fingerprint cards are presented to the lab for evaluation. And look whose names are on these fingerprint cards. Remember I talked about the ridge detail? latent prints of comparison, but not limited to multi-model biometric information. Latent prints 351 does not contain sufficient amount of clear ridge detail necessary for comparison. So we have Brian Koberger on the 5th listed as a suspect. And the comparison results are for Xana. What that means is INCM is an inconclusive match. Okay, INCM stands for inconclusive match. So there's inconclusive of both Xana and Brian as being the contributor of that ridge detail that they're trying to identify. But the fact that they have his name again on the 5th, okay, we need to know why. So look at the narrative over here. Inconclusive in the table shown indicates the comparison is inconclusive to available exemplars. The inconclusive result is due to a lack of quality of detail ridge or of detail in the known exemplars and or incomplete exemplars which to compare. In order to complete the comparison portion of this examination, it is requested that quality of set of friction ridge exemplars, friction ridge skin not typically recorded on a 10 print card, complete foot exemplars.
What does that mean, Chris?
It could be Xana's feet or Koberger's feet. And by the way, this report is done and it's submitted in April, but it was done in January. But they listed him as a suspect back in December. So what they're trying to do is get better fingerprints, better footprints from Brian Koberger to match him to a ridge detail they find at the crime scene. And they can't say it's Xana's for sure, and they can't say it's Brian's for sure. That's what's going on here on this, okay, for these footprints. Now, I have to change screens real fast because I want to go back to the knife sheath real fast. So I'm going to remove this. And I'm going to share this.
Going back to the knife sheath.
Yep. Okay. This is the back of the knife sheath. Why is this so important? I'm going to tell you why. Okay, you see all these DNA where they're pointing to the back of where they're going to swab. Okay? Of where they're going to swab. Now, this is a question that I've had, that I'm having now after seeing this, of why this is important. Remember, we've always asked, why is this knife sheath laying next to her? Okay, so I'm going to zoom in and everybody see this, right? These little droplets of blood here. This is one of two things. It's what they call respiratory droplets. Okay? Or high velocity respiratory. What does this mean? This is how you get these droplets. And forgive me for being truthful. That air, that mist in blood creates these droplets. So here's the question that I've been going over. First of all, we know now, and by the way, this is Maddie's breath. She is alive. And the back of this sheath is exposed to her mouth area. So that means something is going on with this knife sheath in Brian Koberger's either hand. He definitely doesn't have it on a belt loop, because you would not get this respiratory droplets like this on the backside of a knife sheath if he had it on a belt loop. That means he either A, has it in his hand and he has the knife in the other hand, and he's either putting it near her to hold her down, near her mouth, because this is her aspiration here. And this goes to show you the brutality of what these victims went through.
Yeah, what you just described is very shocking and horrific to be thinking about. And I haven't heard anybody else give this analysis. So when you told me this, I was really shocked.
Well, you can barely see it, and unless you know what you're looking for, to your point, okay, the lab saw it. See here? They see it. They see it in 3 spots, just what I pointed out. Okay. They see it at the top. See up here? They pointed out up here. Okay. But unless you zoom in and you know what you're looking for, this gives us an indication of who's dead and who's alive at this point when this sheath is in play. And it also gives us an indication that he's either organized or disorganized while this is going down. At this point, she is still on the earth. At some point, it becomes so brutal, okay? At some point, it becomes so brutal that is coming out where she's trying to breathe. And we know from the autopsy reports that it was chest hits and also head. Okay, over 20 plus wounds on poor Kaylee alone. Okay, but where am I going
And
here? Go ahead.
Yeah, and you remember Kristi told us on Sunday they couldn't even find out how many times their daughter was stabbed when they were preparing their victim impact statement before sentencing, which is just chilling. But go ahead.
Right. And so here's part of, I guess, where I'm going here. On some of the victims, there was this reported post-mortem experimentation. Okay. On Ethan, on Xana. Okay. I'm not going to be surprised. I've got to see the actual autopsy report to know. Okay. Remember, everything in this guy's mind while this thing is going down is fantasy based. When the investigators say, well, we don't know what the motive was and all this other stuff, I guarantee you the behavior science unit told them, okay, that, look, this guy is he's an organized offender who has lived off of this, fantasy for so long, and now he's executing it and literally executing these women. Okay. And so the backside of this thing indicates to us there is no way he could have planted this thing as a calling card or anything like that. He lost control because she was alive and had coughed on the backside of that knife sheath. So this isn't somebody coming in and just dropping it there to frame Brian Koberger. Okay. That ain't happening, because you see him even in the jail cell with his shoes, wiping his shoes down. Okay. And then gently putting the tissue up there. He's this guy here knows exactly what time it is, and he's learning. And just like the other individuals who were his role models, Ted Bundy specifically, in my opinion, he wanted to do some experimentation so that he learned from this incident for the next one. I hate to say it, but I think somewhere they're probably not going to release it. It will not surprise me if he didn't take photographs and that he took something out of that apartment.
But wouldn't his phone have to be on for him to take photos?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
his phone didn't turn on until a couple hours later.
That's a good point. But what if he had like a throwaway camera?
Right. We don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't know. But like I said, it wouldn't surprise me. Okay. And then the other question, okay, is remember that glove situation in when we went there, Karen?
Outside of the house?
Yeah.
At the trash can in the
Yeah.
snow?
Yes.
I remember. The whole glove situation throughout these 2,300 documents, it's so convoluted. They don't come out and say what's what, from
Okay.
my read anyway.
So here's a question. We don't know what happened to that glove. We have no idea. Right?
Yeah.
We don't even know if that's a glove from inside the house. Right? Nobody knows. We don't know if it's an investigator that dropped the glove. Everybody said that I dropped the glove, which is nuts, but that's okay. We rolled with it as a good laugh for a while. However, in Pennsylvania, they find a glove. This is the glove in Pennsylvania. Okay. Now, what's interesting about this glove is it's what they call a black knit heat holder right hand glove. They find one glove with a tag brand info on the cuff, using bright light to examine the outside. Loose threads appear, tearing the knit fabric on thumb, and no stains consistent with blood. So they run it through ALS, alternate light source, and basically what this glove is, it's a, it goes underneath other gloves.
Like a liner.
Like a liner. Okay. So now I've asked myself, well, wait a minute. This is the glove we saw. And this is the glove they found. So here's one of the things that I've always been curious about is, did he take something out of that house? I have no idea. And the glove on the right's the one we saw and the cops collected. There it is. And it had snow all over it. You can see the snow lines in that. And the one on the left is what they found at their house. So I can't tell if this is a left-handed glove based on the position of the photographs we took, because we didn't touch it. We didn't do anything. We just told the
Yeah,
cop.
I think we don't know. I think it's a reach, and we don't know. We can't say for certain either way.
Exactly. However, I find it interesting. Because the lab, and this is what we're going to part two. The lab says, hey, the bed was moved by detectives prior to our arrival, and they're going in there to photograph it. Bed moved by JA to facilitate placing adhesive scales wall hanging on north wall remote in order to place adhesive scales without obscuring blood patterns, thumbtacks and push pins left in place. So basically, they moved everything before they could photograph it, and then they tried to put it back to take photographs.
Chris, isn't that against police protocol and gathering evidence at a crime scene? You leave the furniture, you photograph around it.
This goes into the category of how they went into the house through the same sliding door the suspect left. And that was another episode that we did a while ago. Okay, thoughts, Karen? Because part 2 is going to be good.
Well, part 1 was pretty good too. Yeah, I mean, still so many questions, more questions than answers. But, you know, the evaluation that we're doing of the investigation, I think it's necessary. We will never find out fully what actually all happened. I think that's their plan. They didn't take this to trial. They're dripping out, you know, actually a small amount of the information. And the part that really gets me is that they're not honoring FOIA requests. They're not taking public record requests. And so it's just really frustrating. It doesn't paint a good picture for the prosecution or the investigation.
Yeah, I mean, Payne had 6 years experience at MPD, but most of that didn't deal with a single homicide because they didn't have a homicide in those 6 years that he was there. And when they brought him in that day, quite frankly, they didn't do him any service.
And that never made sense. Why make the lead investigator somebody who's never worked a murder when you've got potentially other older detectives that did work at least one murder from 7 years prior? You know, they'll never answer for that. That's it. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, I think they realized that, you know, he was a go-getter, and he is. But he realized quickly, and that's why I think the ISP guy became the point contact. And I think that guy was over his head too, if you ask me.
Gilbertson?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that's just my opinion. You know, I could be wrong. If you guys got better ideas, I'm all for it. Go start a YouTube channel and run it up the flagpole. Okay. These are just my opinions, my experience speaking. And so far, I hope you guys have enjoyed it. So that said, honey, you ready to go to Hawaii?
I am. We'll see you guys Sunday for our Sunday Night Live.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. Take care. Continue to take care of each other.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away, you and me, go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? taking away, yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down, we're going away, yeah, we're going away, you and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a while.